Landmarks Commission. Will the reporter please take roll call?
Commissioner Inman.
Here.
Commissioner Morris.
Here.
Commissioner Pons. Commissioner Strauss. Commissioner Trump.
Here.
Commissioner Zimmerman.
Here.
Commissioner Kirkman absent, Commissioner Fuller is absent, and Commissioner Woodley are absent. But we have one.
The commission will now hear testimony from the public concerning items not on the agenda. Is there anyone wishing to speak at this time? Seeing none, we will now consider the approval of minutes from June 15, 2023 meeting. May I have a motion to
I move approval of the June 13th minutes.
I'll second.
Thank you. We have Commissioner Inman moves to approve the minutes and Commissioner Strauss seconds. Are there any corrections? All right, all those in favor of approving the June 15th, 2023 minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Thank you. We'll now open the public hearing for historic review case 23-05 at 456 and 466 Court Street Northeast. Would the recorder please read the hearing procedure statement into the record?
This is a public hearing to consider case number HIS 23-05 for property located at 456 and 466 Court Street Northeast. The criteria applicable to this hearing are listed in Single Revised Code, Chapter 230.040D, storefronts, and 230.056, signs in commercial residential districts. Failure to raise an issue prior to the close of the public hearing with statements or evidence sufficient to afford the Historic Landmarks Commission and the parties an opportunity to respond to the issue precludes appeal to the hearings officer on that issue. A similar failure to raise constitutional issues relating to proposed conditions of approval precludes that action for damages in circuit court. Prior to the conclusion of the hearing, any participant may request an opportunity to present additional evidence or testimony. The Historic Landmarks Commission will then either continue the public hearing or leave the record open for at least 7 days.
Thank you. Are there any conflicts of interest or ex parte contacts that any commissioner would like to declare at this time? All right, maybe now have the staff presentation.
Good evening. I'm Kimberly Fitzgerald, Historic Preservation Officer for the City of Salem. I'd like to enter the staff report as attachments and all public testimony into the record. Since this has had sort of a complicated logistical background, I'm going to kind of walk you through how we got here. So the applicant originally submitted their proposal to install 2 security gates and replace the front entry tile back in April. The application was due complete at the end of May, and a notice of public hearing was sent by mail at this time. But on June 5th, the applicant submitted a request to increase the scope of work to add consideration of to add new signage to their proposal, and further requested that the hearing be opened on June 15th and continue to July 20th, which it was. Then the HLC canceled their July meeting, and a notice was sent notifying folks that the hearing was continued to this evening. And the notice was sent out and signs were posted on the site. So I also just want to state for the record that the applicant extended the state mandated 120-day deadline, which originally was September 21st, out to November 20th, so that we would have adequate time to go through our processes. So the property, hopefully most of you are familiar with it. It's downtown in our downtown historic district located at 456 and 466 Court Street Northeast. It's contributing to the downtown historic district. Here's a picture of the primary facade. And most recently, I think it came before you, it was the kitchen on court, and then that business closed, unfortunately. So a little bit about the history. So it is an annex to the Oddfellows Hall. So that building was designed and constructed in 1900 by architects Walter Pugh of Portland and John Gray of Salem. And it was originally known as the Mother Lodge, Shenandoah Lodge number 1 of the Independent Order of Oddfellows in the Pacific Northwest. It held the Grand Theater in the main Oddfellows Hall. And according to nomination documents, the portion of the building that we're considering tonight, a one-story brick addition with flat roof, was known as the Annex, was built in the fall of 1900. Initially, there was only one entrance on the north facade of this building. And in 1922, an addition was added. And in 1936, both additions were rebuilt, at which time 2 entrances were created, and the transom windows and canopies were also added. In 1961, the storefronts were all replaced and reconfigured. And this is approximately when the tile entry was added, portion of which you're going to be considering this as part of the proposal. So now I'm going to go through the proposal. We'll talk about the signage first. So the applicant is requesting approval for one under-awning sign, which is metal, round, and approximately 28.8 inches by 29 inches. And the sign is attached with the existing brackets under the awning at the front entry. And the second sign is a wall sign. So in the same location, if you remember the previous sign for the kitchen on court, above the awning against the wall, the base on that north facade where traditionally there's been signage for the structure. And the applicant again is proposing a round sign, this one to be a bit bigger, 4 feet by 4 feet in size, attached flush to the wall with 4 3/8 inch, 3.5 inch flagpoles. And neither of the signs will have any kind of illumination or lighting. So then this second portion of the proposal, 2 metal security gates made by dynamic closures are proposed, each measuring about 12.5 feet in height and 25 feet across, and will be located across each storefront entry when they're fully extended. Each gate is proposed to be attached to motorized telescoping tubes within a steel mounted casing, which will be secured to a beam with bolts on the ceiling of each storefront entryway. A metal bar will be installed at the base below and at the front of the recessed entry where the gate will be secured when it's pulled shut. And then the last portion of the proposal is the ceramic tile. So as you can see from these photos, the tile itself is showing where it's in poor condition, and the applicant is proposing to replace it with a new clay stone tile with a glazed non-slip coating, and is proposing to match the existing triangular inlay design. The proposed tiles will be approximately 1 inch by 2 inch at the center, and the inlay around the perimeter will be the larger tile to match the existing design, about 2 inches by 2 inches. So I'm going to go through the applicable criteria. So first we'll find the criteria in 230.40D storefronts. And one thing at a time. So the materials, as I mentioned, the tile entry will be replaced with in-kind material. And the material for the security gates is metal, which is a compatible material for this resource and the surrounding historic district. And the design itself, the 1961 entry tile design will be retained and replicated. And the security gate design is compatible with the resource and the downtown security, the downtown historic district. So I am recommending the Landmarks Commission adopt a condition for the installation of the gate to ensure that the installation of the bar doesn't adversely affect the tile entry design. There is a gap between the inlaid tile at the entryways and the larger square tiles that actually were installed by urban development that go into the right of way. So there's a good location for this bar to be placed so it doesn't obscure the replaced tile entry. And the condition reads as follows: the applicant shall not install the metal security gate base bar on top of the inlaid plate tile at the storefront entryways. So then the second applicable criteria are in SRC 230.056, signs in commercial districts. And I'll take it one thing at a time again, materials and design. So the proposed material for both signs is metal, which is a compatible material for signs in our downtown historic district. And then the proposed design, as I mentioned, it's going to be attached under the awning on existing brackets for the under awning sign, and the sign, the wall sign will be attached flush to the front facade using bolts, and no character defining features will be obscured or damaged, and there's no illumination proposed. So there's been no public comment. There's been an email in support from Michael Livingston from the Can-Do Neighborhood Association. Both the fire department and building and safety division stated at the time of permit submittal, verification will be required for the occupancy type. They stated that security gates are allowed for the B, F, M, and S occupancies, but not allowed for A. And the planning division has no concerns. However, the applicant must obtain required sign permits, and Public Works has no concerns with the proposal. So based upon the findings in the staff report, staff recommends that the Landmarks Commission approve the proposal with the following condition. Condition 1, the applicant shall not install the metal security gate base bar on top of the inlaid tile at the storefront entryways. And that concludes the stuff.
Thank you, Kimberly. Do any commissioners have questions for staff?
I just have a quick question. You attached an illustration, or actually kind of a photo of perfect metal security gate. Is that so? But the drawings they actually included were sort of an open slat. You know what they're actually, and then also while you're speaking of that, you had mentioned it was some sort of a telescoping hole. I'm not aware.
So the spec sheet for the actual gate, it should have hopefully been in the application materials that you sent, and so that's where the description of how it works. In terms of the photo of the example, so the drawing, right, that you have in there with the arrows on it, right? That's from the spec sheet. The photo is from one actually installed that they have installed at another location. And
Well, I guess so. This looks like a standard kind of coiling security grill,
right,
which would just be fairly open,
Wide.
wide open. I mean, that the photo is kind of super attractive metal. So I just wanted to see if that was something that you had recommended that they use that, or if they're just going to have kind of a standard security.
so this was done by Sierra, who's not able to be here this evening. And I'm sorry.
Just observing.
Okay. So, and when I asked her, I just simply asked for an example of one, this type of product that's been installed that they're planning to use at this location, and that's what she sent.
Okay.
Because the drawing makes it kind of difficult to,
Yes.
yeah.
Kimberly? And I'm not meaning to second guess this because you know more about this than I do, but I'm just wondering if it's really necessary to make a requirement on where the bar sits on the floor if they're going to be replacing the tile anyway. I'm just thinking that where it lands on the pavement or on the ground, whatever you call it right there, is going to be mostly dependent on where it's installed above. And I guess I question giving them any more constraints when it's already gonna be pretty tricky to get that fit on space, safely and effectively and effectively.
Yes, certainly, it's up to the Landmarks Commission about whether you adopt that condition. The reason behind it, just so you understand, is in order to better meet the applicable criteria relating to ensuring that any new additions or alterations don't obscure character defining features. And this particular tile pattern is a character defining feature.
I see.
And certainly, it would be at the edge regardless, but that's the reason for the condition. But if you're comfortable with not having it, that's certainly your call as the Landmarks Commission. You have the discretion to choose.
Well, I don't know because I'm not looking at it, but I'm just imagining that if they're replacing the tile anyway, they could, make it a border that abuts wherever the bar has to be, just to make it. They can always adjust the pattern slightly.
Right, and
Is that basically what you're asking?
they could adjust the pattern so that the bar does not cover the pattern that they're replicating. And it's not a very big bar, as I would expect. So
Thank you.
I can pull up the picture of that would help.
I did look at
So I do notice in this, it does mention that the actual spec sheet is for the aluminum rod link, which is the open kind of the traditional security drill that you would see on, an urban environment. So I don't think that photo, unless they are specifically saying they're going to follow this, it doesn't seem like that's what they're providing. And then there are color options which are not selected on here. Do you know, have they mentioned that to you? Again, just
Sierra
maybe-
told me it would be black.
Okay.
So, again, she's not here to provide clarification. on
Right.
The discrepancy between the spec sheet and the photo.
Is her stating it's gonna be black captured in here somewhere? I didn't see it.
Yeah, maybe if
Okay,
it's not circled in there, then no.
it'd be great if it was. This one,
Yeah.
or bronze, yeah.
I have a couple of questions. When the gate is in like a stowed position, do we know how thick it's gonna be at the top? They've got like a couple of different options for mounting it. I just wasn't sure.
How thick the mounting bar is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
It does look like it's 1 foot 3 inches.
1 foot 3 inches.
That's on this last sheet of the specifications. So traditionally, we would try and conceal that above a ceiling area, and to just have this the security drill come down. But in this location, it would be good to know, right? Like it'd be good to clarify whether they were just going to surface mount it.
I guess I'm a little bit concerned about the top. If we're worried about the bottom obscuring character defining features, and I'm a little worried about the top obscuring the windows or the detail of the sort of ceiling right here. A little bit hard to visualize how thick that's gonna be.
So again, based on my understanding of it, is that it was going to be mounted to the ceiling of that entryway, and they aren't intending on obscuring any of the character defining features. Now, when you say window, do you mean the storefront window itself that it would hang down?
Yeah,
So building and safety would also have a height restriction. So just like for signs, you need to make sure that it's a minimum clearance height, and they would need to ensure that they meet that for egress. So certainly, if you want to, again, since we don't have the applicant here to answer questions, clarifying the answers, you could choose to add a condition, or you could choose to continue it until the time she can come back and provide more clarification.
okay.
Whatever you're comfortable with.
And then I have a question about the signs on the wall mounted sign. There's gonna be 2 of these big palominos.
No, one.
Just one.
It's confusing because of the way the arrow is.
Yeah, that's my question.
And I think it's one sign.
Okay, cool. So just one sign in the middle somewhere.
And the second sign is under lock.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Are there any other questions for staff? All right, hearing none, and does it sound like the applicant will be able to participate this evening? So is there anyone representing the neighborhood association? It looks like no on that one. Do we have any names from the sign-up sheet? Anybody? Okay. I guess I can ask if anybody here wants to testify, but I don't see anybody else. So does anybody else have any additional questions for staff? In the long time since we've asked further questions. All right. Since there was discussion, do you want to continue the public hearing to next month? Is there any interest in that? Anybody want to make a motion?
I guess in order to discuss it, I move that we continue this hearing to next meeting.
Okay, is there a second?
That's second.
All right, we have a motion to continue this hearing to the September meeting by Commissioner Strauss and seconded by Commissioner Morris. Let's see, all those in favor? Oh, Commissioner Inman.
Yes, does a continuance cause any problem or issue for the applicant since we continued it through our canceled July meeting?
It may. I know that their business is really wanting to at least install signage, and the security gate is meant to address some challenges that they're having downtown with the houseless population. But again, the applicant isn't here to speak to them. So.
I think that I'm not necessarily against the proposal, but I do wish that the applicant was here to provide some clarification on our questions. Like Commissioner Morris, I also have a question about the design of the gate, since it looks like the photo and the spec sheet are showing something different. And I also am a little concerned about the sort of appearance of the gate when it's mounted. I'd like some clarification on that as well. So I think I'm in support of continuing the public hearing, but I'm not necessarily against the idea in general. Just some clarifications would be appreciated.
Yeah, are there any other comments, Commissioner Fox?
Proof the signs.
Is it possible to just approve it contingent on their answering these questions? Somebody, I mean, you know, another month could be a hit for their business and.
I think that's a great question, and I see Trent's jumping forward as well. I think if you're gonna approve something, you can add a condition that they can comply with. But I don't think you can approve it and say approve it contingent on answering these questions in the future. But I do believe you can take out this, you could approve part of the package today. And we could issue a decision on the signage. And bring back the continuing the rest of it, but let's see what our attorney says on that.
I'm not sure that we can do that actually, because we just got one application. I don't think we can split it up like that. So I think you could either continue it to next month, the whole thing, or you could make a decision tonight and go to whatever kind of conditions you wanted to. And I think we're okay on the 120 days. It got extended to November 20th, but it's also doesn't look like they're in the field at this point, but maybe the applicant would, so that's something to take into account, extending the month too.
May I ask, if the Landmarks Commission was going to consider a second condition about the gate, and you could add some specificity regarding which design you would prefer. You've got two choices there in front of you. You could include color and the mounting itself, which is, that's a concern for you, just add some specificity about how it shall not obscure the storefront windows once it's attached. If there's, I'm just throwing some ideas out.
I'd be supportive of us discussing some conditions about that, if that seems a more reasonable, sort of timing response, I'd be happy to consider that.
And we have one more chance, staff would be able to check that at building permits if at all, to verify it meets those conditions.
So I don't think. There we go. I think my biggest consideration is that it's a 15 by 15 box. And they don't show an elevation of where it's going to be mounted. Typically, they're going to be surface mounted in an existing condition like this. So it's a pretty substantial impact to that area. And I'm concerned that a 25-foot, 15-inch by 15-inch is going to obscure, from the photos, it would obscure potentially the lighting that's existing, depending on where they're mounting it. So we don't have an elevation that talks about where it's going to go, or a reflected ceiling plan that shows where they're going to locate it. So, and they aren't here to speak to that. I'm concerned that in two locations on that site, those are pretty substantial. It's a fairly major undertaking to mount those. So I would be interested. I don't know if we can contain that in conditions, but if we can, I'd certainly be interested in that.
Maybe we could suggest a condition that allows a little bit of room for staff to review it. So maybe we could suggest something like the mounting of the gate will not obscure any character defining features, and we could leave it a little bit vague for staff interpretation. I guess it's kind of the same as the one on the bottom, but maybe we could just make it specific to the top as well.
The matters that Chris mentioned.
Make a condition that they do recess it. And that it be a dark, bronze or black color. I mean, would that satisfy? Or do you?
I think if you could word the condition in such a way that you could add some specificity. I can't speak to the structural feasibility of being able to recess that. I wouldn't want it to adversely affect any other portion of the structure. So I think honestly, at least for staff, having the language shall not obscure character defining features is enough clear direction. When I could review at building permit, but again, it's your discretion. If you feel more comfortable as a commission to have it come back, that's your choice.
I'm more concerned about does it meet the architect's conditions? Does that meet what your concerns are? Or would it, is this something that really needs to come back?
Well,
Just trying to balance,
so looking at this, I think it's going to be cost prohibitive for them to do a recessed installation. And I guess I have a question regarding the lights that are along there. Are those part of the historic? They're not. Okay, so those go away. The very small fascia that they have where the 466 shows up. I can't tell. It doesn't look like that's 15 inches of depth, which makes me think that the box would hang below that slightly. But I don't know. So I'm expecting they're either going to side mount it to that, or they're going to ceiling mount it to, and it will obscure where that 466 is. It would just kind of go all the way across there and then come down long as they've indicated. You know, but it's just gonna be a big black box.
Or it could be mounted on the inside. If it were mounted on the inside of that beam, that looks like a beam that goes across the storefront.
It's comfort, so it's flush. Maybe under, but doesn't actually go. It steps.
It's a mounting issue.
So one additional comment. Downtown, they have three challenges, and that's the reason for this. For the businesses, same challenges. Just. Best installation. So it's okay. It's a big deal.
Yeah, I agree with that point. We're seeing more and more gates go in downtown, so careful consideration of their installation, I think is an important part of our responsibility for the downtown.
All right, so there any more discussion? Commissioner?
Does the commission feel comfortable having staff review the mounting location and that it doesn't obscure character defining elements of the storefront?
I feel comfortable with giving staff direction to review this at the building permit. I do want on the record that it's a little bit frustrating to not have the applicant here to sort of clarify some of these questions. So I think we're doing them a favor by offering that as an option. But I would be in favor of offering some additional conditions so that the applicant can move forward with this project.
May I ask, or if you are going to consider a condition, if you are able to discuss amongst yourselves, the box itself is 1 foot 3 inches. Is there a benchmark where it becomes unacceptable? That amount that would hang below? Is it 6 inches? Is it 7 inches? Or do you want to just leave it to judgment?
We think that the this beam that's going across the top is flush to the sort of ceiling. That's what you were saying before, Commissioner Morris. It's like flush. You don't think there's any room there.
It's the one behind it, yes.
Yeah, so there's not really a piece that they can tuck that under. It would kind of just directly on top of the ceiling. It's kind of what I'm understanding.
Again, that's the expectation would be that they would just mount it directly where the address is currently. They would just mount it right there. That's definitely the easiest way to accomplish it.
Okay. So I guess there aren't any options besides getting that full 1 foot, 1 foot and 1 inch spaces, 1 inch, 3 inches spaces. Is that right? Is that what you guys are understanding as well?
So Commissioner Strauss, did you want to, I guess, pull back your motion or change that motion to reflect some of the things that you discussed there in terms of conditions?
Sure, yeah, I guess, I don't know what the technical Robert's rules on that.
Yeah.
Do I need to
It's
withdraw
an amended motion.
amended motion?
Yes.
Okay. Then I'd like to move to amend the motion, to include, well, I guess actually I'd like, to think about maybe what the language of that would be. So I move to recommend, or I move to approve if staff recommends, with the additional condition that the installation of the gate will not obscure any character defining features at the top of the ceiling.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, Commissioner Strauss amends her original motion to reflect to approve the proposal as submitted, but have the additional condition that the on top of the fencing, I guess.
Yeah,
Won't obscure any character defining features of building. And Commissioner Morris seconds. Is there additional discussion, Commissioner Hayden?
Yes, and that the approval, is made with the understanding that the color is, either black or bronze. As discussed verbally with the staff.
would I amend to include another condition? How that would work? Sorry.
I don't know that you can have that many amendments.
I'm not sure. Could you like vote on it and then do a new one? Does that work? But I feel like the one other thing that we should discuss too is the design of the gates. That was kind of another question that we had.
Yeah, so maybe it would be easier if we, because we had the motion to continue. Maybe we could just, because it seems like we don't want to do that now. Maybe we could just get that, like, to not like reject that and then move on to you. And then you could explain exactly what the conditions are for the gate. It seems like maybe there'd be two, one for obscuring characteristics and one for the color.
Yeah, and then one for the design too, so we have 3 total conditions. That makes sense to me, and yes, sounds good.
Okay, so maybe we should sort of rewind, we'll get rid of the motion to continue and then go forward with those motions. And then we can maybe have some, like, we should maybe decide on exactly what the language is for those conditions, write it down so it really has those. So we're not trying to recreate it, and maybe get it wrong. Yeah. Just to be formal, we could, maybe we could do it however we want, but it might be easier if we just take that motion and continue off forward and then start over. So we just, everyone can vote no on continuing the hearing, and then we'll start over with those, the condition.
For the record, the current motion that is in the minutes is the one with the additional condition. If we go backwards, do I then have to go back, say that the condition was changed back? Or do we just vote no on what it currently exists?
Yeah, we can just vote no on what is it is now.
Yeah, why don't we do that, and then we can, that might be the easiest way to go, and we'll start fresh with conditions.
Robert's rules.
All right, so we'll now have a vote on the motion to continue the hearing as well as to approve the proposal and include the amendment that add the additional condition about not having the top of the fencing obscuring historical design elements of the building. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed?
Nay.
Okay, the motion is has failed. Do we have a new motion to set forth?
Okay. I move to approve as recommended with staff with 2 additional conditions. One, that the installation of the gate will not obscure any character defining features at the top of the ceiling. And second condition, that the design of the gate is the one shown in the photo.
I don't think we discussed whether they didn't say for sure which style, but do we care? I mean, does it matter which style they use?
Need a second.
Oh, okay.
Do we have a second?
And a 4th condition, that it's black.
All right, do we have a second for Commissioner Strauss's motion?
I'll second that.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Inman. All right, is there any discussion on the motion?
I think we covered everything we talked about, though maybe one last item to discuss is just that we do want this mesh design as opposed to the sort of gate design. I don't think we really talked about that, so we can amend that if we wanted to change that.
I think that I would love to see the mesh. I don't think they're gonna have the mesh design, and I think it's probably, again, I think that that's probably prohibitively expensive. I know she sent this through, and maybe she does mean that's what they want to use. And that'd be fantastic, but I don't necessarily know that we need to qualify it, because I think. Man, I will go back to what Steve was saying, I'm concerned because this does set precedent for any other gate downtown, and there could be a slew of these coming through over the next couple of years, so. I just talked myself out of it.
So you think we should not condition the design? Is that what you're saying?
I don't know.
I don't think we should, because I think it's already too hard, you know. It's hard enough without adding any extra expense. And, you know, as Chris said, it's probably a lot more expensive to do the other one. It's something that the only people that are gonna see it are the people who are wandering around downtown in the middle of the night, and that's their.
It is the one they said they were gonna install.
And we're not sure because the specs.
Well, I don't think I feel too strongly about the design one way or the other, so I think we could take that condition out if we wanted. I'm more concerned about the top of the gate installation.
All right, since there are so many conditions that we've added, I want to make sure that it's worded correctly before we go to a vote. Zach, do you have that piece? I want to make sure that I have all the wording on that really
Check
clear.
the screen to see if it captures.
Someone turn off their mic.
That's good. So the motion as it currently stands that was made and will have to be amended to match the screen. Is to approve that recommendation with the additional conditions. Condition 2, the matching of the gate shall not obscure character defining features at the top of the storefront entryway. And condition 3, the gate shall be black or brown and shall be the mesh design. So you would have to amend your motion to remove the mesh design.
I move to amend my motion to reflect the conditions that are on the screen.
Second, the amendment.
All right, is there any discussion on the amendments before we take a vote? All right, hearing none. All those in favor of the amended motion that was on the screen, all those, including the additional, including the amendment. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Thank you. I got probably the most fun one.
Do I need to vote on the main motion? You're just voting to amend the motion. Together,
Okay,
to approve the amendment to the match, so you're back.
okay, that's okay. So now, all right, now the main motion as provided, listed by Zach. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Okay, thank you. Okay, we're gonna, thank you, everybody.
Good job.
Just a reminder to all the commissioners, please turn off your microphones when you are not actively speaking.
All right, the motion passes. Thank you, everybody. And now we go to our second public hearing of this evening. It is HIS 23-13 for 1840 Court Street Northeast. With the recorder, please read the hearing procedure statement into the record.
This is the public hearing to consider case number HIS 23-13 for property located at 1840 Court Street Northeast. The criteria applicable to this hearing are listed in single revised code, chapter 230.065. general guidelines for historic contributing resources. Failure to raise an issue prior to the close of the public hearing with statements or evidence sufficient to afford the Historic Landmarks Commission and the parties an opportunity to respond to the issue, includes appeal to the hearings officer on that issue. A similar failure to raise constitutional issues relating to proposed conditions of approval precludes an action for damages in circuit court. Prior to the conclusion of the hearing, any participant may request an opportunity to present additional evidence or testimony. The Historic Landmarks Commission will then either continue the public hearing or leave the record open for at least 7 days.
Thank you. Are there any conflicts of interest or ex parte contacts that any commissioner would like to declare at this time? Commissioner Raymond?
Yes, I received a mail notice about this project because I live within the notification area of the project. I've spoken with the owner for any of the members.
Okay, do you think it would affect your?
I don't believe it will.
All right, thank you. May we now have the staff presentation?
Good evening, Kimberly Fitzgerald, Historic Preservation Officer for the City of Salem. I'd like to enter the staff report, its attachments, and all public testimony into the record. So this property is located at 1840 Court Street Northeast and is a contributing resource to our Port Chemeketa Historic District. Here's a street view of the house and the front entry. I just took today. A little bit about the history. So according to nomination documents, the Hewitt House was constructed by Julia and Henry Schultz in 1907 and was promptly sold to James and Mary Hewitt, who lived in the house until 1919. The Oregon Statesman featured ads advertising a 2-room furnished basement apartment beginning in 1938. And that date's important because I'll mention it when we discuss alterations outside of the period of significance. As a reference, the period of significance for the Port Chemeketa district ends in 1937. I also want to note I've got 2 Sanborn fire insurance maps up here, and when doing historic research, realized that it originally was addressed 1740 Court Street. So you can see that in the 1926, 1927 Sanborn map, where it just shows the house itself with no accessory structures. And then you can see in the later map, then the 1950 updated map, there were 2 separate 1-bedroom cottages that were constructed in 1948 at the rear of the lot. And this has an interesting history. This was one of the very first properties that City Council considered for a rezone from R1 to R2 because of the multiple residential units on this property. So that was interesting from a planning perspective. I also want to note that the previous owner did replace multiple windows with vinyls throughout the house and did remove some original siding. Despite these alterations, the resource is still recorded as historic contributing to the Port Chemeketa district. So these are the few pictures that we have that were submitted by the applicant. The one on the left is from 1978, and the other 2, we don't know what the dates are, but you can see, especially on the picture of the rear facade, the porch that was enclosed in some of the glass windows there. So the proposal, so you can kind of see that, but I'm going to go through it piece by piece. So the applicant is proposing to replace windows, remodel the front porch and back porch, and restore the shingles and the dormers on the front and back. I'm going to take one facade at a time. So the north facade, which is the front, so the existing porch decking and square post rail and porch column are in poor condition. And the applicant is proposing to replace the existing post with a new one, replace the decking and rail, all to be a wood composite or PVC. The applicants are proposing to replace the front stairs. The existing stairs are not original to the structure. They're precast concrete, 9 feet wide, with railings of pressure treated lumber. And the proposed new stairs will be a bit narrower, 6 feet wide, with composite with railings to match. The applicant is proposing to replace the existing basement hopper window. It's currently single pane and wood, and the proposed new window in this location will be of vinyl and slightly a different size. The applicant is proposing to add or restore the siding in this location, which is currently a vertical plywood board, and he's proposing to restore the cedar shingles, restoring the original appearance in this location. And he's also proposing to remove that metal stove pipe on the western edge of the northern slope of that roof because it's no longer functional. So on the west facade, which is an interior side, the applicant is proposing to replace the existing wood window with a new wood double paned, double hung window in that location. And the south facade, there's a lot happening here too. So as you can see, the rear porch is in very poor condition. And it's not fully enclosed any longer. As I mentioned when I was going over the history, best as we can tell, this was the access to the basement apartment. And so it's not original to the structure. And the applicant is proposing to re-enclose this porch area and remove the stairs and the door, and then re-side it to match the siding on this facade. The applicant is also proposing to relocate the existing bathroom window. It's a vinyl window, and he's proposing to relocate it 46 inches to the west of that existing opening. And then the applicant is proposing to replace the basement hopper windows on this facade with new vinyl windows, and also proposing to restore the siding in the dormer area, just like on the front, and proposing to remove the stovepipe in these locations. And last, so the east facade, which is another side facade, the applicant is proposing to replace the 2 first floor windows, which are single pane, double hung, and the applicant is proposing to replace them with new wood double pane. And the basement windows as well. The applicant is proposing to replace the 2 hopper windows with new vinyl. So I'm going to go through the applicable guidelines, which are in Salem Revised Code 230.065. So first, A, historic use. The residential use is going to be retained. So staff recommends the Landmarks Commission find that this guideline has been met. I'm going to take guidelines B and C together, which are related to ensuring that historic distinctive features are preserved or repaired. So I'm recommending the Landmarks Commission adopt 2 separate conditions of approval relating to the decorative square front porch post. So the applicant is proposing to replace this square post, and this has character defining features that are difficult to replicate with modern materials. And so condition 1, staff is recommending the Landmarks Commission adopt this to say the applicant shall complete a condition assessment of the decorative square front porch post, and provided the original material comprising the post retains over 50% structural integrity, the post shall be repaired with in-kind materials. In condition 2, the applicant shall replicate the original material and design of the decorative square front porch post upon authorization that the post can be replaced at the time of building permit submittal. And the historic preservation officer shall authorize removal and replacement of the decorative porch post should the condition assessment illustrate that over 50% of the structural integrity of the post has been compromised and the repair of the post is not feasible. So, criteria, guideline D, historic, which is related to historic features being restored. So the applicant is choosing to replace the siding, both dormers, the front and the rear, so that it reflects the original material on the exterior. And then guideline E. So as I mentioned before, this would apply to the rear porch. So those alterations, as I mentioned, were made best as we can tell in 1938, which is after the period of significance for the historic district. So that in this particular case, since that happened after the period of significance, it does not apply to the alterations that the property owners is proposing. So moving on to F and G. So the applicant is requesting approval to replace the front porch and stairs, again, and enclose the back porch and replace windows throughout. The existing stairs and railing are not original to the Hewitt house, and the proposed replacement stairs will be clearly new, but of a compatible material and design. The replacement porch decking and rail material will also be clearly new, but of a compatible material. The applicant is proposing to replace single pane double hung windows along secondary facades of the resource with double pane wood double hung windows. And these windows will be slightly smaller in size than the existing windows on these secondary facades, requiring the applicant to reframe and reside the area around these new windows. But they're located on the secondary facades, so that will limit the visual impact of these changes. The applicant is also proposing to replace the existing basement level single pane hopper windows throughout the resource with smaller vinyl windows. And the majority of these windows are located on secondary facades, minimizing their visual impact. However, the proposed new replacement window, the basement window on the front facade, is highly visible currently and will have an adverse impact on the resource. So in order to better meet this guideline for this portion of the proposal, staff recommends the Landmarks Commission adopt another condition of approval. So condition 3, stating the replacement basement window on the primary facade of the Hewitt house shall fit within the existing 40-inch by 21-inch opening for the original window in this location. The sash and frame material shall have the appearance of wood and be paintable. And the proposed replacement window material and specifications shall be provided to the historic preservation officer at the time. Moving on to H and I. So structural deficiencies. So the biggest challenge I think for this resource is addressing the issues with that rear porch. And he is enclosing the porch, which is at the rear of the resource, and it will result in some visual impacts and changes to the resource. But again, because it's at the rear on the secondary facade, it will minimize the impact. And there is no excavation or roofing proposed as part of this proposal, so that guideline does not apply. So in sum, staff recommends the Landmarks Commission find that the proposal meets the applicable guidelines in SRC 230065, provided the recommended conditions of approval are adopted. So moving on to testimony, we've received a number of public comments in support. So just today, we received, it should be on your desk, an email in support from Stephen Elmore, an email from Joan Lloyd in support, and then the applicant submitted testimony in support from Jane Fisher, Drew Hoffman, Laura Oldham, Charles Stoll, and Joshua Edel. We received no formal comments from the NEN, Northeast Neighborhood Association, and The Building and Safety Division indicated that building permits are required and that all deck and guard designs will require manufacturer's installation instructions, and the windows will require verification of egress requirements. And all of this information will be required when documents are provided at building permit submittal. The Planning Division, Fire Department, and Public Works had no concerns. And we received no public agency comments. So this will probably be hard to read. So staff recommends the Landmarks Commission approve the proposal with the following conditions. Condition 1, the applicant shall complete a condition assessment of the front porch post and provided the original material comprising the post retains over 50% structural integrity. The decorative square post shall be repaired with in-kind materials. Condition 2, the applicant shall replicate the original material and design of the decorative square front porch post upon authorization that the post can be replaced at the time of building permit submittal. And the Historic Preservation Office shall authorize removal and replacement of the decorative porch post should the condition assessment illustrate that over 50% of the structural integrity of the post has been compromised and repair is not feasible. And last, condition 3, the replacement basement window on the primary facade of the Hewitt House shall fit within the existing 40-inch by 21-inch opening for the original window in this location. And the sash and frame material shall have the appearance of wood and the proposed replacement window material and specifications shall be provided to the Historic Preservation Officer at the time of building permits. So that concludes the staff.
Thank you, Kimberly. Are there any questions for staff?
I have questions.
Commissioner Ender.
You said that the applicant request is planning on changing the width of the stairs from 9 feet to 6 feet. And there are no drawings in here indicating where in the existing stair location that 6 feet will be to the east side of the existing stair or to the west side.
The applicant's actually here, so we can speak to that when it comes time.
Okay. So that's one question, and I clearly in the exhibits that are in the packet, photos 1 and 2 showing the front porch railing and front porch column, as well as the historical photo from 1978 shows the original column and railing. Those are character defining elements of the house, and I think we need to do everything we can to preserve the corbels and the railings and the post and so on. So I think I'll direct my other questions to the applicant to clarify some issues.
Are there any questions for staff?
Yeah, more questions. There's a few windows that are proposed to be replaced. Was there original windows? It seems on the alley facade. Was there a window assessment submitted with the application materials?
A window condition assessment. So the applicant can speak to this as well, and I think the primary reason for the replacement is the weatherization issue. So the needs have double pane as opposed to single pane, but I'll let them speak.
Okay. And then just kind of talking about the condition for the wooden post. Just to clarify, if the post does not retain 50% structural integrity and can be replaced via the building specification, are we replacing the post with wood or the wood composite?
So the condition is intended to be wood, so in kind, not wood.
And there, they're proposing wood composite for the rest of the porch. Okay, thank you. Appreciate that clarification.
So this is more of a, I guess, the general discussion item. I've had to deal with many of these issues myself, and like Julie, I guess I should have said, I also live in that neighborhood, so I am thrilled that the house is being rehabilitated, and I've snooped around and looked at it in great detail, and I took pictures too. So a couple of comments. I object to the requirement to replace it with in-kind materials, simply because at the time that that house was constructed, the materials available were far below the standard of what available materials are today. For example, the moldings that appear on that design are actually readily available from the same mills that mill the original materials, but they are made out of much more durable materials now. So, you know, I mean, I think it makes no sense to replace them with the same materials when the original materials were a poor choice. They were simply the only choice at that time. And they weathered very, very poorly. They just don't hold up. But the new materials are sandable, paintable, completely indistinguishable from wood. So I would remove that condition if it were up to me, and I would suggest that that not be a precedent, since I'm going to be doing miles of that stuff on the outside of my house. And I've done tons of it on the inside as well, and the results are, the results match exactly to what was the original. I mean, they just look clean, you know. So I think it is possible to do it with newer materials and not have to match the original materials, but to match the look. So that's my only objection there.
Commissioner Strong, is there a question for staff? These are only questions for right now, please.
Okay, so I guess the question is, can we modify that requirement to make it more feasible for the owner to restore it in a way that will last better and longer? Okay, please.
Yes, of course. So again, these are just recommendations for you to consider, and I should give a little background. So part of what I did with this particular case is I reached out to the restoration specialist who you're familiar with at the State Historic Preservation Office, just to see what they're recommending for decorative features like this, and this is what was recommended to me. But again, it's a discretionary hearing. You can adopt these conditions as written, or you can modify them as you did with the previous case. So, and you can take them apart, or you can, it's your choice.
Clarification to staff. Yeah.
So I did, yeah, that was a question I asked, which is part of the reasoning behind their comment that the windows are going to require verification of adequate egress, especially at that rear. But I was told that for a residential property, they only were required to have one.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions for staff? All right, thank you, Kimberly. I will now call for the applicant's testimony. You state your name and address for the record, or your business address if you're representing the applicant, and please note that your testimony is limited to 15 minutes.
Okay.
Alan Vanderhoff. We actually have two residences, one of our residences in San Diego, and then we have another residence in Portland. It could be the Portland address or Portland.
Either one, whatever you prefer.
1500 Skyline Boulevard. You got it on the file. in Portland. So my wife and I own a number of rental properties, less than 10. And we bought this one a year and a half ago. With the intention of fixing it up. I recently retired from practice of law. I've been watching the TV show This Old House for the last 30 years. Now I'm ready to jump in and I view this as a retirement project. Honestly, it doesn't really make sense from a financial standpoint, it's individual property, which is why I think it's never been fixed up before. The cost of renovating the house couldn't really be justified with the additional rents because it would take many years to break even. But I have another incentive in that. It's a good project. It'll be worth more. My kids will get it eventually. That sort of thing. The house is in extremely poor condition. I don't know how many of you have seen the house or been in the house. The prior renter owned it for 30 years or so. They were absentee landlords, and I spoke to their management company, and they told me that they just had a standing order, just don't spend any money on this house unless it's absolutely necessary. And as a result, it's deteriorated over time. I heard your comment. I'm the most popular guy in my street right now. All my neighbors are very excited about this. After I bought the house, I did it for the first time. My son, who went to Willamette University, said, "Oh yeah, that's where my fraternity brothers used to live." And I said, "Okay, that kind of makes sense." When I bought it, there were tenants in the house. They were all alcoholics and drug addicts. You cannot imagine what this place looked like inside. Oh my God, the filth of this place. But that's what happens when a house deteriorates over time. The tenants, alcoholics and drug addicts are probably not people who would rent the place. But we're very excited about fixing it up. I've already been doing a lot of work on the landscaping and making that look a lot better. But what questions? I think you had a question about the railing.
I think that's Juliana.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I have-
Okay.
In the report, says that you want to narrow the front stairs.
Oh, yeah.
From 9 feet to 6 feet.
Yeah, it'd be centered the way it is now, so it'd basically just be on either side, just coming in.
Okay, what was your,
Otherwise, it would line up.
what was your intention with the existing rail on that porch?
Yeah, well, the railing that's on there now is rotted. Just take it, just shake it back and forth. But it's also, it doesn't meet current codes because it's only about maybe this high. It'll be a little more, which was common at the time that house was built. But now building codes require that to be higher, so people don't, fall. So what I had in mind is to have that railing match the rest of the railing. So what you have is railings that look like wood with spindles on it, these things are called. And it'll come around and then go down the steps. So it'll look really nice.
And are you aware that the building codes are not retroactive?
I think well, I'm not an expert, as I say, lawyer, not a builder. But from watching This Old House, when they address that issue, they have to make the balance higher.
Well, there are a number of ways to achieve a protective railing height without removing the existing historic railing. And that's what I'm concerned about is there are very few features of that house that haven't been messed with over time, and that porch is one of the character defining front elevation features of the house, and I think that it needs to be protected. And that's, you know, putting back shingles on the dormers, all of that is just wonderful. These are great things.
That was my carrot too.
Yeah, all of that is great. And, you know, using modern materials for the flat work on the porches and, you know, steps, all of that, that's the stairs, that's all just great. But I think there needs to be a balance between preserving those few remaining character defining features and modern livability, longevity, you know, the ability to weather the weather here. So the composite horizontal surfaces, stairs, floor material is fine. Porch railings, because you're going to want to have a, you know, a safe railing. But I'm very concerned about keeping that original box column and the corbels at the corners and the decorative work that was added to the box column and the porch and the original railing on the east side. And I think all those aspects are either salvageable or repairable or can be replaced with paintable materials that will match in surface texture and, you know, finish of the original. But that's my.
Yeah, it's always been our intention to maintain that column, well, not maintain the column necessarily, but my idea was to reproduce the column exactly as it looks now, but in more durable materials, PVC to be precise. And then it would look exactly the same as it looks now, but it would last a lot longer. But I don't have a problem with doing it wood, although I would prefer to do durable material. As to that little side rail, the condition of it is such that it would have to be rebuilt out of new material. I mean, we could replicate it, but we'd be replicating something that won't comply with building codes, and it wouldn't match the rest of the railings on the porch. I think that on balance, I think it would look odd, and it's not a very attractive railing. It's not ornate. So I prefer to have that railing on this side match the railings that are going to go down the steps, which will look like wood, but it would be made up of wood.
Okay, now with the box column, it is a box, and there is most likely a wooden column inside the box.
That would be my guess, because you can tell that on the outside of that is boards that are.
Yeah, it's just one by material that's
One by material on the outside.
right.
I don't know what's inside, but
There's probably wood post inside there.
that would be my guess.
And it's probably just got toe-nailed joints is probably just nailed in at the top and the bottom. And I would suggest or recommend, and the building department I think can advise you on this, but if the post inside, which is not visible, but it is structural, needs to be replaced, that you go ahead and use top and bottom or base and cap connectors so that it's a better structural element. As you can see, it holds up the corner of the house. So I think the building department will probably make a suggestion. What goes in there is going to be, it's not going to be visible. It's going to be completely covered up by the box. And the box is going to be a painted box that's going to appear to be wood. It could be a composite material. You know, you can get a a good finish on it and, even the trim on the box, I think needs to be, that little applied detail needs to be put back.
Yeah.
Corbels either remain in place or put back, they, in my quick look,
We will definitely keep those cool.
get the corbels back.
One of the posts, if you look at that picture from 78, originally it was, well, at least back then it was painted like in contrast, so it looked a lot better than it is now. And that's going to be a great feature, having that trim, that design on the outside.
Yeah.
Painted in a contrasted color. And I don't know the condition of the inside, but you can see the outside of it, especially the bottom is a very poor condition, but that's just, that's just decorative, molding around it, so. The rest of the house on the inside, most of the structural parts are in good condition. It's mostly cosmetic, on the outside, things. Particularly at the back, which it was never intended to be open to the elements, So, I don't know when that happened.
I don't have any issue with, those kinds of repairs. One other question I have for you, is on the replacement wood windows, insulated glass windows. And you talked with the window provider about adding the OG lugs on the upper sashes so that it matches the OG lugs on the upper sashes.
And what is that?
If you look at photograph.
On Landstones, so at the bottom. So they're right here, and they're these, they were functional, right?
Yeah, the
They
purpose
look
of,
like a little, I call them a Landstone.
they're little, or the shape is an OG curve. So they're, and they are a continuation of the, of the side, the side piece of the window, and with a double hung window, the purpose was to prevent the upper sash from, when you lower it, or if the sash cord breaks or whatever, when you lower it, to keep the sashes from binding together, and for the upper sash to come down and get stuck on the lower sash. So even if that upper sash comes down, it will stop because of those lugs. It will stop before it hits the sill and won't get stuck on the lower sash. So window manufacturers can make, or even carpenter on site can make OG lugs that can be added onto the upper sash so that it matches the historic window. So, you can go around and put all the insulated glass windows in there and paint it out, and it looks like the old windows. So anyway, that was my.
We had a limited budget, so these windows are already expensive. I don't think we could afford to get custom made windows. But maybe I could add something that would look like what you're talking about.
They can be applied. But it's, and the only place where I think you can see it, unless you're replacing all the windows in the house, are you replacing the upper windows?
It's funny you should mention. I actually had mentioned to Ms. Fitzgerald that maybe we should get the approval that would be broad enough that once I redoing the inside, basically redoing the walls on the inside. So once it's opened up, I considered replacing those with wood, the same windows that would be on the other side. I don't want to commit to it, because for our sample, it's not necessarily because those windows are in good shape. But it's something that I would consider if it's worth like the new project.
It might be something worth having approved in your project so that you don't have to come back for a second.
Yeah, that's what I was saying.
For a second approval, and clearly the vinyl windows that are in there with the little fake grids, are replacement windows, and the house had 1:1 windows originally, so.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't see what couldn't extend.
So if I can just say for procedural reasons, because we didn't talk about this until after the notice was sent, it wasn't added to the scope. And if you did want to restore those upper windows with a similar product, that would be an administrative review, so you wouldn't have to come back to me. It's pretty straightforward to do.
Yeah.
Do we have any other comments from other commissioners, Commissioner Strauss?
Yeah, I have a couple of questions, kind of following up on this window question. And just one, I would be in support of you replacing the vinyl windows because they kind of detract from the historical look of the house. So if you could replace them, I think that would be a good replacement. I'm a little bit hesitant to be supportive of the removal of the original windows. What kind of condition are they in?
They're not in good condition. The one that you see in that picture there is a particular concern. It's a very wide window, it's like 52 inches, and it's single pane, non-tempered glass. And I have opened it a couple of times, and each time I opened it, I was in fear for my life that if this thing breaks, that window is in very poor condition, but also I think it's somewhat dangerous. But also it's so large in single pane glass that for efficiency purposes, it's should also be replaced.
Yeah, I guess I'm a little bit concerned about the replacement of those windows, meeting the criteria, especially here for like historic materials, when possible, shall be preserved and repaired. So if they're not in that bad of condition, I don't think replacement would meet that criteria. I'm wondering if you considered like storm windows, which can significantly improve the energy efficiency and also be a much reduced cost when replacing the window, if that's part of your concern.
Yeah, I did consider that, but ultimately rejected that idea. Just because the windows themselves, as I say, are in very poor condition. They would probably have to be replaced in any event, but even if they were, taken apart and painstakingly stripped and reglazed and all this sort of stuff, it would, it wouldn't have any energy efficiency.
Yeah.
When I talked to the tenants who work in there, they mentioned that this house is really hot in the summertime and very cold. You have the guys there. Oh, we get lots of fresh air because in the wintertime the wind just kind of blows through the house. And it's mainly these windows that are old and loose and I think the appearance on the outside, although there'll be new windows, there'll be new double wooden windows, which are quite expensive, but they would be in fitting with the style of the house. Now this window that you see on the screen here, that actually is not visible, I don't think, from anywhere other than between these houses. You can see the eaves of the next building. This house has this property has another building right next to it, which is only maybe 3 feet distance, probably less than measured from the eaves. And that window is in that little alleyway between the two buildings, so it's really not visible. The ones on the other side are visible from non-public alley, but as I say, the new windows will appear very much like the original.
Yeah, I guess.
Energy efficient.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. I think my concern is really coming from the criteria of whether you're going to be able to meet that criteria without more evidence that, it seems like it could be possible to, repair these windows rather than replace them. So I might consider maybe we could put a condition similar to the porch condition for the windows, like you submit some sort of assessment for the windows, and if they are in fact poor quality, not fixable, then you could replace them as proposed. That might be something I would be in support of, if that's something that you might want to do.
Would be inclined to do that, and the other conditions I'm fine with.
Yeah.
But these windows,
And I think storm windows don't need approval either, that's correct. So you could put in storm windows without coming back to HLC as well.
yeah, the problem with strong windows is then you can't open them. So people aren't able to open them and get fresh air. Because we're in the business of providing housing. We're in the business of, it's not, we're not buying this to live in ourselves, we're in the business of providing housing for people. And these windows are one of the larger factors that make this house pretty much unlivable at this point. It's not just the windows, but there's almost no insulation. There's certain places on the inside where you can actually see daylight coming in from the outside. And part of the problem, so I wouldn't be inclined to do that. And I don't think it would be probably in the best interest of the house, or the people who are, the generations of people who will live in there going forward.
Yeah, and I totally understand, I respect that. And again, I'm kind of going back to this criteria about whether, if it's possible to repair them, and that's what the criteria is asking. So that's kind of where I'm coming from on that, but yeah.
But one thing I would stress as well is that the replacement windows are in fact wood double windows that will match the style of the house, but will be energy efficient, which I think is the better perception.
Can I ask a couple of questions?
Sure.
First of all, just following up, I mean, I see the concerns, but it's also not visible from the public right of way. I mean, you've got to squeeze between two houses on private property even to see that window.
Yeah, I don't think you can actually see it from the street, or if you can, you just see maybe just the framing.
But a more important consideration is what is going to meet building code, and it's got to have, if it's a bedroom and it's the only window on that side, you're going to have to meet egress. So you can't have a strong window that's latched on the outside. I mean, I don't think
That's a good point, because because I have been going through the building department process, not completely done, but got one more issue that they want to address. But one of the earlier issues was in fact the egress issue, as far as what these new windows, how much do they open and do they meet the requirements for egress, which they do. But you make a good point that if you put storm windows on, it would not meet that requirement.
I mean, they can be latched on the inside. It's an additional barrier. We're all freaked out about fires right now.
For good reason.
My main question that I've had while you've been going through some of these things is, did you have an engineering assessment done? Because that would guide things like that front porch post, the kind of fasteners and attachments that you use.
They did not have an engineering assessment done. I don't think it was necessary for the things that we're doing. But there's a building department that's all over as far as the one thing that they want is that back porch and probably supported, roofing, flooring. They're very thorough.
Okay.
So I'll have to satisfy all their concerns.
You may get hung up there for a while.
Yeah, they've actually been very, I've never really had to deal with building departments. And people who's, not just the building department in particular, but generally people always complain, approvals, all that sort of stuff. But they have been so supportive and so helpful, particularly since they don't have a lot of don't really have any experience. When I first submitted the plans, it's like, I've never seen building plans, you know, so I just kind of cobbled together what I thought, you know, with a long narrative of rural neighborhoods, everybody's going to do. And that it's all automated. So we don't accept narratives. It has to be in drawings. So eventually they led me in the right direction. We're almost done that process now.
Thank you. Are there any other questions for the applicant?
I have one question. This is maybe following up a little bit on Juliana's question. So, when you're replacing the stairs of the front porch, why did you choose not to just replace them full width, which would preclude you from needing to do any new railings at all?
Well, I don't know if we've seen the railings out here. The railings are just a rough pressure treated lumber that's basically just glued together. Hideous.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm thinking more on the porch itself. So what the issues was
Yeah,
that,
there's only one railing.
right, and so if you did full width stairs, which is what is shown in the 78, you wouldn't have to add any new railings. So I know that was,
Well, the steps would still need to have railings.
the stairs would have to have some type of a handrail.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't want to leave it somewhere.
But when you're proposing then is that you'll bring 6-foot stairs and you'll bring a new rail across the front of the porch.
Yeah, so the steps will be a little narrower. And it's probably only going to be, so it's 9 feet now, it'll be 6 feet. So it's really going to be maybe 18 inches on each side to come out 2 post railings down, steps like that.
So I guess I'm still,
Yeah.
so I'm still curious why you didn't just decide to kind of follow this original model that was the full width that didn't have any sides.
Well, I think the stairs, I mean, I think the current stairs are pretty, you know, they're made of precast concrete. I don't know when they went in, but it was a long time ago, but it wasn't back in 1907. But I think it just is. I think they're.
I think they need to be replaced. I'm not saying you don't replace them. I'm just saying,
Yeah.
why not still replace them with the full width? Because this porch looks like it was always designed with full width stairs.
Yeah, I wouldn't bet on that because to me, the stairs look overly wide. And it makes that porch not really look like a porch, but that's really just it's like a landing of some sort. That's my personal opinion. But
We don't have any historic beyond 78, which is,
but yeah, we know that they're not original because of what they have, the precast.
Can I just jump in really quick? It looks like on the Sanborn, you can see the outline of the porch, so that might bring it up. Question.
Yes.
Yeah, it looks as wide.
Oh, yeah. I'm not suggesting that the porch changed, but I think those steps, I can't imagine that in 1970, not fit wide concrete steps or even wood steps.
well, as the siding original, is the siding on this first floor original to the house? Do we know? Is the siding original on the first floor of the house? It is.
I'm
So
assuming it
you
is.
can see a connection point from any previous railing that would have been there. I mean, I also own 3 rental houses that are all over 100 years old, and I think it would be actually very difficult for them to do a full width stair in that time period. They're all 1900s and 1910s. And it just seemed like it'd be an easier way to, again, retain, as Juliana was saying, the only sort of primary characteristics of this house.
Yeah, my neighbors have been trying to convince me to keep the concrete stairs. So I'll be real less. But there's a house across the street. There's 2 women who has Ray and it has kind of a thing, it looks fabulous. But I kind of modeled it after different steps, which I think just looks really nice. As opposed to, you know, one of the things that I think is, I believe, is people looking to see this picture guys back there. One of the things I think that's just ugly is about this house is on those front steps and and those, pressure treated lumber. Makeshift railings that. So I think if you, yes, if you look at the picture of the front of the house, which I don't have in front of me, you can imagine that with narrower wooden steps with nice, nice handrails stepping down, looking very nice. Whereas, yeah, so I can figure out the screen with this trunk itself. The full wheel. Now imagine that now.
Can you go back to the microphone?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at that picture and you imagine that with concrete steps, you see this railing's gone, and slightly narrower wooden steps with right appearance, to look like wooden hand railings, rails coming down, it would look much nicer, but it would also look much more typical of the neighborhood of those houses. Most of the houses in those neighborhoods have wooden steps that are narrower with railings. Personally, I think those steps are some abomination someone built back in the 50s or 60s, and they haven't gotten any better with time. I personally.
All right.
Also consider, as you're considering this, is that the restoring the wooden shingles to the two dormers, that's going to be quite expensive. It's just materials would probably be $5,000. And I really kind of offered that because I knew that there might be some concerns about some of these other things. But I offer that as a carrot that I'll restore those dormers if I can get these other things approved, which I think is certainly a bigger trade. Because the restoring the dormers doesn't do anything for this landlord. It's not going to affect the building cost. But it's something that should be important to this board. And I offer that as an incentive for approving the other things.
All right, are there any other final
Just like
things?
one little question. Can you tell us, I'm looking at the side here, like this little diamond window, is that still there? Like photo 13 is the one I'm looking at.
Look, picture of like the side that faces the alley, because that's something I kind of wanted to address.
What of this? No.
Photo 3 shows it.
Oh, yeah, there you go. That's a good view of it.
Yeah, so this house, that's one of the architectural features. If you look on the left side of that photograph, you see the diamond shaped window. If you look on the far right side, you'll see a square shaped window, which I assume is not originally. I assumed that it had that diamond shape because those diamond windows are in each of the closets of the bedrooms upstairs. I actually had considered, and maybe this should be included in or since this is not the front facade, I suppose it can be done without. But I thought about taking out that square window and fabricating a diamond shaped window to match on the other side, which was, I'm sure, what was there originally. That square shaped window is actually a glass one. But again, I don't want to commit to it because it's up on the second floor and to do pretty much all this with myself. So, but that's something I would consider doing.
Yeah, but the diamond one, I guess, is it like painted? Is that why you can't really see it? Or-
Yeah, it's painted gray with the rest of the house.
Okay, so it is still there.
Yeah.
Okay, it's very
Yes.
cool. I love that window.
Oh, it's really cool. And there's a matching ones on the other side too. But yeah, when they painted this house, they basically painted almost everything gray. Whereas there's a lot of if this house was painted nicer, with contrasting trim and that stuff, it could look really good. Any other questions?
All right, thank you so much.
Sure.
Thank you.
All right, is there anyone representing the neighborhood association? right, seeing none, I will call for other testimony. And seeing none yet again. And is there anyone else who'd like to testify? No, okay. And are there any additional questions for staff? All right,
I have a question for staff.
okay,
The proposed conditions don't seem to address the replacement of the original porch railing, which is a character defining element of the front facade. So is that something we should address?
You can certainly choose to.
any other comments? All right, hearing none, I will now close the public hearing. No additional testimony will be accepted at this time without formally reopening the hearing. I will now call for a motion.
I'll move to approve as recommended by staff.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, we have a motion by Commissioner Kraus and a second by Commissioner Potts. Is there any comment, Commissioner Strauss, to your motion?
Yeah, I think in general, I am supportive of this project. It looks like there's a lot of great work being done to this house to help preserve it. I still do have some concerns about the removal of the original windows, especially when it comes to meeting criteria 230.065B. And so I might like to discuss maybe amending of that motion just to include some information, like a condition assessment maybe of those windows, and then maybe as Commissioner Inman was suggesting about the railing, maybe we could also ask for some sort of condition assessment on the railings. That'd be something I'd like to discuss as we're discussing the motion.
Commissioner Potts, do you want to comment on your second?
I think I. Difficult for us to assess whether they can store it.
I think we heard testimony that that is the condition. It's a poor condition, it has to be replaced, not. I thought that's what you said.
Very poor condition.
I would just say that I would appreciate a little bit more information about that, at least that staff could evaluate. We have a pretty standard, window assessment that we ask folks to turn in when they replace historic windows. So I think that at the minimum would be appreciated, just to make sure that if we are going to be removing this original material to the house, which frankly is kind of the only original, like some of the only original features of this house, especially if the porch railing or the porch, the post needs to be replaced, that will be some of the only original material for this house that's left. And so I would just want to be careful about removing those windows without evidence that they are in fact unfixable.
All right, do we have any other comments on the motion?
I'll just comment that I can't support the motion because the project would be removing the character defining element of the house that is shown and identified in the National Register nomination, and I don't see any compelling reason to remove it.
You're speaking about the railing.
I'm talking about removing the porch railing and changing the appearance of the house that dramatically by narrowing the stairs and adding the rails and adding rails that are not historic, do not look historic, and then do not look like rails of a craftsman era house, so I just,
Okay, if there are no other comments, we will go to a vote.
Can I guess I'd like to move to amend the motion to include some more information. Maybe I should have done this before, sorry. But I guess I'd like to move to amend condition 1 to include a condition assessment of the railing and the windows that are proposed for replacement.
And is there a second for the amendment?
I'll second.
Okay, I think we still have to vote on the first part, right?
No, the first motion was just to approve staff recommendation, so this is your first amendment to that, so you can't add more amendments, you need to vote on this. And then if there's additional conditions you want, that would be another amendment.
Okay, so, but in voting, all right, so we have a motion to approve the proposal with staff recommendations. In addition to a motion with changes to condition 1.
The only motion before you is to change the conditions.
Change the
You should just vote on that and then you go back to the.
Okay,
So it's just,
All
do you
right.
want to change the condition in line with what Commissioner Strauss is proposing?
okay. Do we, let's see, we already have a second on this, I'm getting myself off, oh, that's right, Commissioner Morris. Okay, all right, we'll vote on the motion to change the condition number 1. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Okay. All right, and now we're back to the original motion to approve the conditions as provided by staff. Are there any?
Well, the motion now was to approve the conditions
With-
as you just amended.
Yes.
Right.
As amended by the a motion. All those in favor, say aye.
Sorry, I just have a quick clarification. So currently, motion 1 or condition 1 applies. You want to apply this, the windows and railing to both condition 1 and 2, because one of them is if it is good, you have to use it, and one of those, if it's bad, you can replace it, right?
Yes, that's what I want to do.
Really, you agree that
Does that make sense?
Yes, that's, I'm trying to type it with my.
Thank you for clarifying that.
You guys can go ahead.
So do we need to clarify that again then, because it does affect the second item on there, as Zach had mentioned. Then I guess we need to have a new amendment since we need to have that clarification.
we would want to do an amendment to condition 2 as well, separately.
Okay.
But maybe let Kimberly type it and then everybody can read it for a minute and she makes it really big on the screen.
Oh my God, I should just do that.
While we're waiting, just a reminder again to commissioners to turn off their microphones, they're not speaking.
Okay. I'll make it, and hopefully I caught them all.
Okay, so we have a motion to amend condition number 2 with text that has been provided on the screen by Kimberly. Is there a second?
Commissioner Shropshire, does condition two as worded cover the intent of your motion?
I believe so, yeah. My intent is to have a little bit more information about the replacement of the windows and the railing before they're allowed to be replaced. Which I think was reflected in condition 1 too.
These facts.
I guess maybe one thing I'm noticing though is that so this is now saying that the original material design of the windows will be replaced, which the new windows are smaller, correct? So that would not be possible. I guess, do we need to add the window and the railing to condition 2? In order to capture that? I guess if the windows retain 50% structural integrity, then they will be repaired with in-kind materials. I feel like that covers it. Right? Am I wrong? I think it's the second condition 2 is about the design of the decorative square front porch post. Specifically, so I don't know if we need condition 2 windows, as I'm understanding it.
I think the difference is that in 1, we're asking for the assessment, and 2, just can. Right from the assessment.
If I may, if you're comfortable with his proposal as it is for the windows and the porch railing, then if the condition assessment comes back showing less than 50% is structurally intact, then he can go ahead and replace as proposed.
Yes.
The alternative is to add it to condition 2, and it would be a requirement to replace in design.
Which I don't think is my intention. I think my intention is to say the design proposed is fine, but I would like some evidence that the windows do in fact need to be replaced in order to replace them, and the railing is part of that suggestion. So I think it's just condition 1 that we need.
Does that apply to the windows and the railings or just the rail, or just? I'm concerned that one of the things is that the design of the railings is not approved well, I guess this is your motion, but Commissioner Inman is against a different design for the railings, so I'll leave that to you.
Yeah. Is there a condition that would make you more comfortable that we could propose?
I don't believe that character defining element should be removed off of the front of the building. It's already been quite heavily altered.
I have an idea then maybe. What if we have the windows and the railing be added to condition 1, and then condition 2, we do not add the windows, we just add the railing and the post. And that way the post will, or excuse me, the railing will need to be replaced in kind if it is in fact structurally deficient.
Yes, that would be fine. And then new railings, if the stair is narrowed and handrails are added for that new stair, that would be as submitted. But additional safety railing, which could be added above the existing, would be another small element, but that's the kind of thing that can be added without removing the historic railing, the appearance of that history. So that's, yeah, I would feel better about that.
Okay, so it sounds like we don't necessarily have a second on condition 2, it needs to be, so if there's no second, then that amendment dies, and so we would need another amendment that would reflect the new wording for that.
Okay.
Piece.
Yes, so I would like to move to approve as recommended on the screen here, which would include the windows, railing and post in condition 1, and the just the railing and the decorative post in condition 2.
Condition 1 was already done.
Great, just condition 2, sorry, condition 2. So I'd like to move to amend condition 2 to include the railing and the post.
Is there a second?
Second,
All right, does anybody want to comment, Commissioner Strauss, any more on the motion?
I hope that this is good. I hope it works.
Commissioner Inman, do you want to add anything? Are there any other comments regarding the motion with the additions and changes on condition 2? All right, hearing none, all those in favor of the amendment to condition 2 provided by Commissioner Strauss and seconded by Commissioner Inman, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. All right, thank you. I think we got that piece done. Main one, yeah. All right, and now we go back to the main.
I'm sorry to complicate things. I do want to ask one question now that we're kind of back to this original motion as amended. Do we want to talk about the front porch anymore in terms of the widening of the railing versus the 9 foot versus 6 foot? Is that right? Or are we happy with it as proposed? I feel like we should at least talk about it since there were some questions, but if we're all fine with it, then that's fine with me.
All right, if there are no additional comments for the original motion, as amended, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed say nay. All right, the motion passes. Thank you for the very detailed debate on that one. Since we don't have any action items, we'll move right into the discussion items. And we'll start off with the toolbox grant request, which we received two. And I think Zach, you can be able to provide us a little more with that.
So I'll give you a little bit of background. So these requests encompass two different cycles for the toolbox grant. So for those of you who aren't very familiar with it, we offer two cycles every year of our residential toolbox grant for smart homes for their owners to work on upkeep, and we provide a matching grant on their expenses up to $1,000. In our first cycle, we had the groups apply to replace the back door on their home, and so this is from our first cycle, which ended on June 30th. They requested an extension, and previously in the procedures for toolbox grant, staff is allowed to grant a 30-day extension, so we did do that. They were unable to complete the work within that amount of time, so we are asking the historic, or they are requesting the Historic Landmarks Commission to give them a further extension. They submitted a letter with that request, as well as just some general information about the specifics of their project. One thing, they didn't request the specific number of days. Staff, in reviewing their request, thinks that this would be a reasonable amount of time for them to complete. Based on what they've proposed and the actions they still have to take. But it's technically you don't have to make a decision on this. We're just requesting your input as it falls outside of our normal parameters. And then we have a second request. I don't know if you want to talk about each request individually.
Yeah, let's, I guess, just start with the first one, and then we can jump to the second one and give a little bit more information.
If anyone has any questions about it, welcome to ask this.
I read through their report and it seems like they're working on it, so I'm in support of the extension request. I guess maybe the big one question, are they allowed to apply for other toolbox grants while one is still open?
So that is theoretically the reason for the request is you can't have more than one in a cycle. So they do want to, they have applied for an additional grant this cycle. And so technically they could have an open one from their old cycle and start a new one. However, they could not have two in the same cycle, which is why they're requesting an extension instead of just applying again.
Do you foresee any like logistical problems with allowing them to have two open at once?
Not particularly. We have the funding to fund both of them. We will complete inspections as required for both of them. We'll get appropriate photos and things. So I don't foresee an issue, but
Okay. I'm still in support then.
Does anybody else have any comments about them? I'll say that, I can kind of understand the information that they provided about like why, things didn't get completed in the manner in which they initially expected to do so. Things happen, different openings, that kind of thing. So to me, I don't see it as an issue. I think, it's just, that's kind of how things go sometimes. You have something planned out and then there's different opportunities to get something done early or, kind of make some, have some changes come up while you're, when you first start a project and when you finish. So I don't see it as a big deal or an issue at all.
You're not required to take a vote, but it sounds like you're in favor. So assuming that is correct, we'll go ahead and issue an extension. And then our second request, so this is in cycle 2, which the application period for that has just closed. So in our process, we do say that you apply for the grant. We will give out grants either until it closes or until we run out of funds or until it closes on first come first served basis and things that get approved and whatnot. So theoretically, staff had time, we would review them as they come in and approve them as they come in. And what happened here was, this applicant, applied for the grant. And before staff had time to review it and before the grant application period closed, they sent an email to staff asking or saying, hey, our contractor has an earlier availability, can they start early? And technically, in the grant application, you cannot start to work before you are approved. However, they applied before they started the work. And they did ask if they could get approved before their construction started, but they sent the email on a day that I don't work. And then construction started the next day when I responded to their email. So I didn't have time to get that done for them. So this is a weird circumstance in which we would approve this grant, but they started it before we formally did approve the grant. So we don't really have a procedure for what to do with that. So we're looking for guidance on that. And we may want to discuss what that means in the future for future applications, but in this particular circumstance, this is a grant that we would approve, but they did start construction before actual approval of the grant happened.
And this is, are these like rules that like we've set up, or the rules for the box like written down in official manner somewhere?
It's not entirely clear, so I am referencing just a general procedures document that was generated by staff in 2018. That it states that work can't be started until after approval, but it's just like an unofficial staff processing document. It's not here is something that was approved by either the HLC or the city council, because the city council contributes funds to this, so they did approve the Toolbox Grant program in general, but that document doesn't list the step, like these sort of.
I think I see like that rule coming into play, like if historic design review was required. You know, sometimes people like learn about the fact that they need to get historic design review for these projects during the grant approval process. And so I'm assuming this is in kind of replacement, so it wouldn't require anything like that.
So it did require a type 1 historic design review, which is an administrative review by Kim, and they did receive that before. But I believe, so they came in and asked about the grant, and I told them you would need both to get approval for the grant and to get historic design review. And they applied at similar times, and we were able to process the historic design review, and it was approved before any sort of construction happened. Yeah.
So one question here, I mean, or substantially matches what they submitted.
Seems to me it's keeping in the spirit of what grant is for, and they're doing all the stuff they're supposed to do, and this is just kind of a detail.
I think the question that it leads me to ask is, should we clarify in our procedures documents that work cannot begin, or work can begin after application, but we obviously won't guarantee the funding until they're approved. So we don't have to require that construction wait until approved.
Well, the issue is that their contractor was available then, right? And we've got a really short window of opportunity for contractors in the summer, so I think.
They did have a previously scheduled time, so that they would have started after we approved, after we processed all the applications. They just weren't able to start earlier, so they would have still been able to complete the work had they waited. But it's also fine that they did it early. It's just the process question, I guess.
What would the clarification be that you would propose?
That work doesn't have to wait until approval, just it cannot be they can't apply like retroactively. So they would have to, the work could not begin before the application, but it could begin before the approval of the application.
I guess my concern would be is if they were proposing something funky that like couldn't be approved for some reason.
That we would just not approve the grant. But
Yeah, maybe it's not a problem. I don't know.
Yeah, you're effectively just saying, you can start work. You apply, after you've applied, you can start work, but you're not guaranteed that the grant will be approved. So it's at risk. And that's pretty normal. I mean, I think they could understand that.
And I was curious, like, how often does this kind of come up where we've had these kind of instances? Is it kind of rare, or is it, more common than it appears, where, they have a situation like that that can, where initially it's gonna be at one time period, and then they're able to move it up, and it's before things are, approved?
I would say that the Toolbox Grant Program, nearly every single application has something that's different about it. But it's not consistently like, oh, we consistently are able to start construction early. But I would say that most grant applications do have some sort of either something that the applicant wasn't aware of. Most commonly in the past, we have had issues where people didn't realize that they had a lead certified contractor. But we recently discussed with our risk assessment, and we're putting the risk on the owner instead of the city. So we're changing that requirement, but that's a common thing that people will come to us with. Here's our proposal, here's our contractor, and then we'll say, I'm sorry, you can't use that contractor. So they'll have to switch contractors, or they'll start their application. We've had issues with either starting late or we did last 2 cycles ago, I believe, we had someone who it was an odd situation in which I had to clarify with the contractor when the work was actually completed. Because they're like, oh yeah, it's been done for a while. I was like, well, we just approved you. And then I literally called the contractor, and they're like, we completed work or we started work on this day. I was like, great, that's the day after I approved their application, so it's fine. But there's always something weird going on.
And if I could just jump in, I know we're gonna segue into subcommittees, but I think one of the subcommittees, it might be something to consider. And I'm thinking of the homeowner forum, perhaps, since one of the issues that we're seeing is a limited availability of contractors who are qualified and experienced in working on historic properties, and then that leads to the issues with the opportunities, the narrow window that they have availability to do the work. And we do have a list of qualified contractors, but again, going back to the intent of the grant, which is meant to help ease the pain of having to all the money that goes into these houses. Anything we can do to streamline our Toolbox Grant program to make it actually a benefit and not a bureaucratic hardship, that's kind of our goal. But we also need to have a consistent process, so it's not too intimate. So maybe it could be something we could forward to the committee.
For future.
And at this moment, we just need to either decide to grant this or not, and we can discuss actual procedures later.
I think if the sort of implication of approving this doesn't cause any immediate concerns for staff, then I'm in favor of approving.
I think we should put them.
I'm in favor.
And this one again does not require a vote. Sounds like majority is in favor, so we'll go ahead and let them know. And that is we have to discuss the Toolbox Grant on this episode.
Thank you, Zach. The next thing we have is our action plan updates. Hopefully folks had an opportunity to do a little bit of work when we were without a meeting in July. So I think we could just probably go around the room and just kind of see how everybody's going. Does anybody want to start and kind of give an update how things are going?
Sorry. we did get, the Oregon, Criterion Schoolhouse was submitted to Kimberly on like a draft form. And I think Juliana and I are gonna work together to, kind of beef it up for them. So it'll be ready for submittal to the local historic resource foundation, which should be very cool. So we got a little bit of progress on that, which is, I guess, a little bit about number one.
Thank you. Let's see who wants to go next. Yeah, I don't know, Commissioner Strong, have you been officially drafted to do subcommittee work yet?
It's kind of unofficial, but Kimberly prompted me, reminded me, and my suggestion is that we plan to do something in the spring, which is, you know, or in advance of the spring building season. I mean, we start when it's still raining anyway, but Pleasant people are usually starting to try to schedule things and work with neighborhood associations to plan something where we can get, you know, line up a bunch of resources, give an opportunity for people to ask their questions and get some straightforward answers, clarify some of the mysteries, and also give some of our local press people an opportunity to share their availability and expertise, because we do have a lot of the work on these historic homes is done by individuals who live locally and know how and have the, you know, the equipment and materials and skills to, for example, make historically appropriate storm windows, which are simply not the kind of thing you can just, you know, order on Amazon. Only.
Thank you.
So that's my thoughts on it. I'd love to hear ideas. Other people's ideas. I have way too many.
Yeah, so I think we talked about, you know, in that regard, seismic rehab, seismic strengthening, in light of what I've been reading about reinsurance and insurance issues in disaster-prone areas. Give some consideration to that, or, you know, have an insurer or a reinsurer or somebody available. But, you know, these are some of the bigger issues for historic property ownership, you know.
Thank you for the reminder on that. And also in our neighborhood, there's been a recent discussion about the fires and I mean, part of historic preservation is making sure we don't all burn the ground and being prepared for things like, you know, just backflow protectors and all, you know, flooding, fires, all those kinds of things are, you know, highly relevant to savings. Yeah, those are good things to think about. I think there's plenty of interest.
In that vein, I was going to talk about this at the end, but I'll save time. So we, Salem has been selected by the Chabot Heritage programs to participate in a pilot project for disaster planning for heritage resources, which will include historic districts. So we'll have somebody hopefully come back and talk to y'all about it. And if you're a liaison to the forum, which I think I'm assuming Kirsten and or Brett, you'll be invited to those meetings.
Awesome, that sounds amazing.
So 10 number 7 reached out to a vendor that actually is interested, they were interested to have prior to the call about a demomatic workshop at the state fair. So considering very to see them there, show their wares. It's all about restoring.
Commissioner Raymond, do you have an update?
No, I was just going to suggest that one of the local contractors, Matt Miller, be interested in helping with the window with your issue and some of this stuff. I have nothing to report on cultural landscapes.
And Commissioner Timbrook is leading the charge. She's not here tonight. But she'll probably have an update next time. That's not true. We haven't talked.
I've been busy with the radio social media stuff. I provided a couple of the history moments for KMUZ for Kimberly and Zach to work their magic with. Jennifer and I are going to be sitting down when she gets back from her trip back east, to kind of go over some of those. I'm just gonna, either help her with some content or, hopefully make it so it's not too big of a scary thing, trying to, smoothly provide, 3 to 5 minutes of content without, too many times where you have to restart and kind of make the least sound smooth like you're not reading it. But I think we'll have a few more of those as we can, continue throughout the year for sure. And definitely it's still, keep busy with the social media stuff. We put the photo contest winners out there, and it seemed like people really like to see those and who won on those kind of things. I think, those kind of opportunities are really good ones, to showcase, just because it's a hyper local kind of information that, is unique to Salem, unique to, to the contest or to the HLC. So it seems like you get a lot more response from folks when it's something that's really, that local stuff. And that's about all I got for now. I guess we can dovetail into the newsletter aspect of things. Zach, what do we have on tap for the next?
The next issue of the newsletter will go out in September. It's the next month, September. We'll go out in September. And the theme of that one we had discussed as being the subjects of the photos from our photo contest. So not necessarily the winners, but just in general, the photos. I meant to put together a list of all the locations, but I did not do that information this week. I do know that we have the fair, we have Bowling University, we have First Presbyterian Church, we have the Capitol Tower and Inglewood Forest. We have the one or two of the Capitol building.
Is Inglewood Forest a local resource?
No, but they are interested in designation.
Okay, cool, because that was designed by Lauren Scribe, or at least part of it, right?
Well, she was on one of the very first parks commissions, so
Okay.
she, I'm actually in the process of trying to track down.
Okay, cool. Cool. I was just thinking about that. when you mentioned it. I could write an article about that.
And I can send an email with the list of locations for people. If no one is immediately jumping to something. We also have some residential buildings in Fort Temecula district. If someone wanted to write about the district or if you want to write about your house, if there was a photo of your house, I believe. Or the tech cottage.
Yeah, I've got a lot of photographs of the district.
You also have a very prolific.
Yeah. He's got really good cameras too.
So I'll go ahead and if unless anyone wants that right now, I will go ahead and send an email with those locations. And hopefully we will get maybe 2 or 3 more interested commissioners.
Thank you, Zach. All right, now we have the Historic Preservation Officer report. Kimberly, what do you got?
So I just want to, next time Jennifer is here, Commissioner Timbrook, she attended the National Alliance of Preservation Commission's camp at Oregon City. And she got copies of handouts and PowerPoint presentations, which she said she would share with y'all. If you've not ever been to either a conference or one of their camps, it's fantastic. They provide a lot of helpful information. I am going to Warm Springs tomorrow. I can't remember if I mentioned this. They are interested in pursuing a memorandum of understanding similar to what we have already with the Celeste and Grand Ronde. So very exciting. And they have some new staff. It seems like they're getting on their feet after some very difficult 3 or 4 years, especially issues with them. Hopefully it's fun. Anyway, and then I just want to mention that next meeting we should have hopefully some news about a new historic preservation process. So, exciting.
Thank you, Kimberly. Does anybody else have anything to say for the good of the order this evening?